There is a reason why a simple plate of stir-fried greens or a bowl of dumplings tastes completely different coming out of a Chinese kitchen. It is not the ingredients. It is a set of very specific techniques the Chinese have refined over thousands of years and that almost never appear in a Western cookbook. None of them are complicated, and every single one works in a normal home kitchen starting tonight. Here are 35 more clever Chinese cooking tricks that most people have never heard of, counting down to the one that will change how you cook forever. Number 35. Soak your rice before cooking it. Before the rice cooker ever gets switched on, the Chinese rinse their rice until the water runs clear, then let it soak in fresh cold water for 30 minutes. This pre-soak allows each grain to absorb water evenly all the way to the core, so when it cooks, the rice hydrates uniformly instead of staying hard in the center. The result is noticeably fluffier, more separated grains with a better texture. Most people dump dry rice straight into water and never understand why theirs turns out gummy or uneven. Number 34. Measure rice water with your knuckle. Chinese cooks almost never measure rice water with a cup. They level the soaked rice in the pot, rest a fingertip on top of the rice, and add water until it reaches the first knuckle above the surface. This method works regardless of how much rice you are cooking, because it measures the depth of water above the grain rather than a fixed ratio. It sounds primitive, but it is remarkably accurate, and it is how hundreds of millions of Chinese people cook perfect rice every day without a single measuring tool. Number 33. Use the rolling cut for vegetables. For carrots, eggplant, and other firm vegetables, the Chinese use a technique called the rolling cut, where you make an angled slice, roll the vegetable a quarter turn, and slice again. This creates irregular wedge-shaped pieces with far more exposed surface area than flat coins. More surface means faster, more even cooking, and much better sauce absorption. Uniform round slices, the usual default, cook slower and soak up almost nothing. This one knife habit instantly improves any braise or stir fry. Number 32. Crosshatch score squid and kidney. When cooking squid, kidney, or other quick cooking proteins, the Chinese score the surface in a fine crosshatch pattern before cutting into pieces. As the pieces hit the heat, the scored surface curls up into a beautiful flower shape and, more importantly, cooks in seconds while grabbing onto every bit of sauce. Unscored squid cooks unevenly and turns rubbery. This flower knife technique is one of the clearest markers of a skilled Chinese cook, and it is easy to learn at home. Number 31. Score a whole fish before cooking. Before steaming or frying a whole fish, the Chinese cut 2 or 3 diagonal slashes down to the bone on each side. These cuts let heat penetrate the thick part of the fish so it cooks evenly, and they give the seasoning a path deep into the flesh instead of just sitting on the skin. Skip the scoring and the outside overcooks while the meat near the spine stays raw. This is standard in every Chinese kitchen that serves whole fish, which is nearly all of them. Number 30. Smash your cucumber and garlic instead of slicing. For the beloved Chinese smashed cucumber salad, the cucumber is never neatly sliced. It is smacked with the flat of a cleaver until it cracks apart into rough, craggy chunks. Those jagged, torn surfaces absorb dressing far better than a clean-cut face ever could. The Chinese do the same with garlic, smashing it to release far more aromatic oils than mincing. The irregular surface is the entire point, and it makes a genuine difference in how much flavor clings to every piece. Number 29. Separate the stems and leaves of your greens. When cooking bok choy, napa cabbage, or any leafy green with thick stems, the Chinese cut the dense stems away from the tender leaves and add the stems to the wok first. The stems get a head start of 30 to 60 seconds before the leaves join them. This way, both parts finish at exactly the same moment, the stems tender crisp and the leaves just wilted. Throw the whole thing in at once, the common habit, and you get raw stems with mushy, overcooked leaves. Number 28. Rub the hot wok with ginger before frying fish. To keep fish skin from sticking and tearing in the pan, the Chinese heat the empty wok, then rub a cut piece of fresh ginger firmly across the hot metal before adding oil. The ginger leaves behind a thin protective layer of compounds that dramatically reduces sticking while also subtly perfuming the surface. It is a tiny extra step that solves one of the most frustrating problems in home cooking, and almost no one outside a Chinese kitchen has ever heard of it. Number 27. Blanch your tofu in salted water. Before cooking tofu in a stir-fry or braise, the Chinese drop it into gently salted boiling water for 1 minute. This does two things. It removes the raw, beany taste that fresh tofu often has, and it firms the exterior so the tofu holds its shape and does not crumble during cooking. The salt also seasons it lightly from the surface. This simple pre-blanch is why tofu in Chinese dishes tastes clean and holds together, while home-cooked tofu often falls apart into a bland mush. Number 26. Start meat in cold water, vegetables in boiling water. The Chinese have a precise rule for blanching. Meat and bones always go into cold water that is then brought up to a boil, because the slow heat draws blood and impurities out gradually for a cleaner taste and clearer broth. Vegetables always go into already boiling water because fast cooking preserves their color and crunch. Getting this backwards, blanching meat in boiling water seals the impurities inside. This single principle separates cooks who understand Chinese food from those who are guessing. Now, those first 10 techniques will already put you ahead of almost every home cook you know, but stick with me here because the next group is where the real restaurant secrets begin. And number 1, the very last trick, is the single most transformative thing the Chinese do that most home cooks have simply never learned. Number 25, dry fry your green beans. For the classic Sichuan dish, the Chinese cook green beans in a dry or barely oiled wok over high heat until the skins blister, wrinkle, and char in spots. This dry frying technique, called ganbian, drives off the beans' internal moisture and concentrates their flavor while collapsing them into an intensely savory, slightly chewy texture. Boiling or steaming green beans, the usual default, leaves them watery and bland. A few minutes of dry frying transforms the humblest vegetable into something people cannot stop eating. Number 24. Deep fry peanuts starting in cold oil. To get perfectly crunchy peanuts for cold dishes in Kung Pao, the Chinese add raw peanuts to cold oil and only then turn on the heat, letting the oil and peanuts come up to temperature together. This slow, even rise cooks the peanuts through to the center without scorching the outside. Toss peanuts into already hot oil and they burn on the surface while staying raw inside. This gentle cold start method guarantees an even golden crunch every single time. Number 23. Fry crispy foods twice. For dishes like sweet and sour pork, the Chinese never fry just once. They fry at a medium temperature to cook the food through, let it rest for a couple of minutes, then fry a second time at a higher temperature for 30 seconds. The first fry cooks the interior, and the second fry drives out surface moisture to create an extraordinarily crisp shell that stays crunchy even under sauce. This double fry technique is the reason restaurant fried dishes stay crispy, while home versions turn soggy in minutes. Number 22. Make your own Sichuan pepper salt dip. The Chinese rarely serve fried foods without jiaoyan, a simple dipping salt made by toasting plain salt with Sichuan peppercorns in a dry pan until fragrant, then grinding them together. The toasting releases the citrusy, numbing aromatics of the peppercorn and infuses the salt with a complexity that plain table salt cannot touch. A tiny bowl of this beside fried chicken, tofu, or shrimp elevates the entire dish. It takes 3 minutes to make and keeps for weeks in a jar. Number 21. Add a pinch of sugar to savory dishes. This one surprises most people the most. The Chinese add a small pinch of sugar to countless savory dishes, not to make them sweet, but to round out the flavor and enhance the natural savoriness of the other ingredients. Called tai xian, this trick balances the sharpness of soy sauce and vinegar and makes the whole dish taste fuller and more harmonious. You will not taste sugar at all. You will just notice the dish tastes more complete, the way restaurant food does. Number 20. Tenderize tough meat with hawthorn. When braising tough cuts like beef shank or brisket, the Chinese drop in a few dried hawthorn slices, a small, tart red fruit found in every Chinese grocery. The natural fruit acids gently break down the connective tissue and collagen as the meat simmers, producing meltingly tender results in less time. It also adds a subtle brightness that cuts through the richness. This is a centuries-old Chinese kitchen secret, and it works far better than simply cooking a tough cut longer and hoping. Number 19. Heat raw oil to smoking, then cool it before making chili oil. Before the Chinese pour oil over chili flakes to make chili oil, they first heat the raw oil all the way to smoking, then let it cool down for a few minutes. Heating to the smoke point removes the raw, beany smell that untreated oil carries, and cooling it slightly prevents it from burning the chili flakes into bitterness on contact. Skipping this step is why homemade chili oil often tastes flat or scorched. This is the foundational move behind every good batch. Number 18. Pour your chili oil in 3 temperature stages. The best Chinese chili oil is not made with one pour. The Chinese pour the hot oil over the chili flakes in 3 separate stages at descending temperatures. The first, hottest pour, extracts deep color and aroma. The second, cooler pour, builds fragrance. The third, coolest pour, preserves the fresh, bright top notes without burning them. This layered approach is why authentic chili oil has such a complex, roasted yet fresh flavor that a single pour can never replicate. Number 17. Poach delicate meat in warm oil, not hot. For silky chicken and fish slices, the Chinese use a technique called sliding through oil, where the marinated meat is gently poached in warm, not screaming hot oil for just a few seconds until it turns opaque, then drained. The low oil temperature cooks the surface gently without toughening the protein, keeping the meat impossibly tender before it goes into the final quick stir-fry. This gentle oil poach is a core restaurant technique that produces a tenderness home cooks rarely achieve. Number 16. Turn off the heat before adding egg to soup. For silky egg drop soup, the Chinese turn the heat down to the lowest setting or off entirely, then slowly drizzle the beaten egg into the hot broth in a thin stream while gently stirring in one direction. The gentle heat lets the egg set into delicate feathery ribbons instead of clumping. Pour egg into a hard boiling soup, the common mistake, and you get tough rubbery lumps. This tiny bit of temperature control is the entire difference between silk and scrambled chaos. Number 15. Steam fish on a bed of scallions. The Chinese never lay a fish flat on the plate to steam it. They prop it up on a bed of scallions and ginger, or even a pair of chopsticks. This elevates the fish so steam circulates all the way around it for even cooking, and it keeps the fish out of the liquid that pools on the plate so the bottom never turns soggy or waterlogged. It is a small staging trick that produces dramatically better steamed fish, and it costs nothing. Number 14. Pour off the first fish steaming liquid. After steaming a whole fish, the Chinese always pour off the murky liquid that collects on the plate before adding any sauce. That liquid is full of the fishy, off-tasting compounds cooked out of the fish, and leaving it there ruins the clean flavor of the finished dish. Only after discarding it do they add the fresh soy dressing and the sizzle of hot oil. Most home cooks have no idea this step exists, and it is the difference between a clean-tasting fish and a muddy one. Number 13. Use boiling water dough for dumplings, cold water dough for noodles. The Chinese use completely different doughs depending on the dish. For steamed and pan-fried dumplings, they make a boiling water dough, which produces a soft, tender, slightly translucent wrapper. For noodles and boiled dumplings, they use a cold water dough, which is chewier and stronger. The water temperature changes how the flour's gluten develops. Most home cooks use one dough for everything and never understand why their wrappers are either too tough or too fragile for the job. Number 12. Rinse cooked noodles in cold water. After boiling noodles for a cold dish or a stir-fry, the Chinese rinse them under cold running water and drain them well. This washes away the sticky surface starch that makes noodles clump, and the cold shock firms them up into a springy, bouncy texture. Sauce then coats each strand cleanly instead of sliding off a gummy mass. Skip this rinse and your noodles turn into one sticky lump. It takes 10 seconds and completely changes the texture. Number 11. Add a pinch of baking soda to your noodle water. To give ordinary dried noodles or even spaghetti that springy, chewy, ramen-like bounce, the Chinese add a small pinch of baking soda to the boiling water. The alkalinity changes how the wheat proteins behave, producing the same effect as the alkaline water used in traditional Chinese noodles. Suddenly, a cheap box of noodles has the satisfying, elastic bite of hand-pulled noodles from a noodle house. It is one of the cheapest and most surprising upgrades in all of Chinese cooking. Now we are into the top 10, and this is where the truly transformative techniques live. The last few are the reason Chinese home cooking tastes like nothing an ordinary home kitchen produces, and number 1 will genuinely change the way you cook forever. Number 10. Start your buns in cold water when steaming. When steaming yeast-raised buns like mantou and bao, the Chinese place them in the steamer over cold water and only then turn on the heat. As the water slowly warms, the buns get one final gentle proof before the steam fully sets them, so they rise tall and fluffy instead of shrinking and wrinkling. Drop buns into an already boiling steamer, the intuitive approach, and they seize up and collapse. This gradual cold start is the secret to bakery soft buns. Number 9. Add a splash of vinegar to the steamer water for white buns. To keep steamed buns bright white instead of dull and yellowish, the Chinese add a small splash of white vinegar to the water beneath the steamer. The acidic steam that rises helps keep the surface of the dough pale and clean. It is a professional baker's trick from Chinese steamed bun shops that costs nothing and makes homemade buns look as flawless as the ones in the display case. The vinegar flavor disappears entirely, leaving only the color benefit behind. Number 8. Add cold water 3 times when boiling dumplings. When boiling dumplings, each time the water returns to a rolling boil, the Chinese pour in a small cup of cold water, and they repeat this 3 times before the dumplings are done. The cold water lowers the temperature just enough to keep the wrappers from bursting while giving the filling time to cook through fully. The result is dumplings with perfectly cooked skins and fully cooked centers every single time. It is called Dian Shui, and every Chinese household knows it. Number 7. Make the crispy rice crust in clay pot rice. For clay pot rice, that beloved dish with the golden crunchy crust, the Chinese drizzle a little oil around the edge of the pot near the end of cooking and turn the heat up for the last couple of minutes. The oil and direct heat crisp the bottom layer of rice into a deeply toasted crackly crust called guo ba, which is the most prized part of the entire dish. This deliberate crust building is an art the Chinese have perfected, and it turns plain rice into the highlight of the meal. Number 6. Scald and glaze poultry skin for glass-like crackling. The secret behind Chinese crispy skin chicken and roast duck is a 2-part trick most people have never seen. First, the Chinese pour boiling water over the bird's skin to tighten the pores and firm the surface. Then, they brush on a thin glaze of maltose or honey mixed with vinegar and let the skin air dry for hours before roasting. The scald plus the glaze produces a shatteringly crisp, glass-like mahogany skin that no simple roasting method can achieve. This is restaurant crackling made possible at home. Number 5. Stir your meat filling in one direction only. When making the filling for dumplings, wontons, or meatballs, the Chinese always stir the ground meat vigorously in one single direction, never back and forth. This consistent motion aligns and develops the meat proteins, giving the cooked filling a springy, bouncy, cohesive texture the Chinese call onwaku. Stirring randomly leaves the filling loose and crumbly. This one-directional discipline is the difference between a filling that holds together in a satisfying bite and one that falls apart into sad, dry crumbles. Number 4. Pass your ingredients through oil before stir-frying. This is the single biggest restaurant secret in Chinese cooking, called guo yu, or passing through oil. Before the final stir-fry, the Chinese briefly submerge the meat and even some vegetables in warm oil for a few seconds, then drain them. This flash pre-cook sets the color, seals in moisture, and par-cooks everything, so the final stir-fry takes seconds and comes together perfectly. It is precisely why restaurant beef is glossy and vibrant, while home stir-fry looks gray and dull. Once you understand oil blanching, restaurant quality results are finally within reach. Number 3. Season with ginger scallion water, not just pieces. Instead of adding chopped ginger and scallion to a marinade or filling, the Chinese crush ginger and scallion into a bowl of water, let it steep, and use the infused liquid. This ginger scallion water carries the aromatic flavor throughout the meat evenly, seasons without leaving hard bits, and adds moisture that makes the final dish juicier. It is the invisible foundation beneath countless Chinese dishes, from meatballs to marinades to fillings. And it is one of the most elegant seasoning techniques ever devised. Almost no one outside a Chinese kitchen has heard of it. Number 2. Rinse the baking soda off, then re-season. When the Chinese tenderize meat with baking soda, they do not just cook it as is. After the baking soda has done its work of loosening the proteins, they rinse the meat thoroughly under cold water to wash away any trace of soapy taste, then pat it dry and season it fresh with soy, wine, and cornstarch. This two-step approach gives you all the silky tenderness of the baking soda with none of the off flavor. It is the missing step that ruins most people's first attempts at velveting meat at home, and the number one trick that will change your cooking forever. Beat water into your meat filling. This is the technique the Chinese consider the true secret to juicy dumplings, wontons, meatballs, and lion's head meatballs, and it is almost completely unknown outside China. Instead of just mixing seasonings into ground meat, the Chinese slowly beat cold water, often the ginger scallion water from earlier, into the meat a little at a time, stirring vigorously in one direction until the meat fully absorbs every drop and becomes light, sticky, and almost fluffy. A pound of ground pork can absorb up to half a cup of liquid this way. When it cooks, that trapped water turns to juicy, tender richness instead of a dry, dense lump. This is why Chinese dumpling filling bursts with juice, while the typical homemade version is a tight, dry ball of meat. Master this one technique called Da Shui, and every filling you ever make will be transformed. That is all 35 more clever Chinese cooking tricks. Try just a few on your next meal, and the difference will be impossible to miss. Share this video with someone who loves Chinese food. Drop your favorite technique in the comments below and subscribe because we have so much more coming.